Welcome to the Governance Task Force Roundtable 2020. This is the webinar part 2 of our two-part series. So greetings. You remember that the first webinar was the 43rd GA presentation, and I am so pleased to be joined by Pekka, who is one of the core team members of the task force. We are going to jointly present this webinar, and what we really want from you after listening to this presentation will be your input. It's a call to action for you to submit your thoughts. More of that as we go on. By way of overview, this roundtable is, I'm going to present a little bit about the themes. We'll talk about your engagement and input, and that's really where we want you to listen so that you can understand the key questions. We'll then just start concluding with the next steps and the reporting. Remember, if you want a bit more background and you didn't get the webinar part 1, please do go back to that link because you'll hear all about what you were asking and what we delivered. But now, webinar part 2, the roundtable. Recall that the whole debate of this task force on governance is all about, do we really need to change in a formal way, which means our statutes and rules would have to be amended, or do we have to change informally, which just means actually adopting slightly different practices? This is what the report will discuss. In order to discuss that, we need to dialogue and debate with you. So what we've done to date has been developed, if you like, and distilled in a whole series of your needs, those that you identified. If you were to go to the appendix paper in the General Assembly papers, you will find this briefing note. This briefing note is a picture on the left, and in it you will find all of the things we're going to be talking about today, because it was going to be the document that was going to guide our discussion. Instead, it's the document that guides the discussion right now in this webinar. So your needs were all identified. The core team clustered them into 3 broad headings: governance, the branding, which is very much the FIG Working Week conferences, and also the third was volunteering. Now, when you look at your needs in those clusters, we came up with some real key issues. In total, there are 7, and they are spread throughout those 3. So to facilitate your engagement, we really want to talk you through, Pekka and I, the needs that were identified by you, and therefore the resulting key issues, or if you like, key questions. And we've labelled these A to G. And we're going to expand also on the reasoning, how they came across. And that's by way of considerations. These considerations came as a result of the core team's thinking, but also crucially because of some of the feedback that we were receiving from members. So I'm going to urge you right now, before we start, to jot down your ideas, reflections, observations as we go along. It doesn't matter if your responses are detailed or brief. It doesn't matter how they come. You can even print off the PDF slides, scribble over them and send them back. But whichever, please email the FIG office, myself or Pekka, because we do need your comments. So what we are asking from you today is to look at each of those 7 key issues. Does it resonate with your own experience? Do we in fact identify the right priorities? Have we actually missed something? Or indeed, is there a specific option that you really would like to see in the future strategy? Again, I remind you, what you're going to hear is also in this briefing document and is available on the website. So without further ado, I'm going to begin on one of the 7 key issues. That's key issue A. Now, this is all about adapting the GA format. And do we indeed change how we conduct our business? Because the needs we were hearing were very much coming out of that. That reference 3.1.1 refers back to the briefing note for your information. Each key issue will have it. But back to this key issue then. So is it, are we responsive? Are we quick enough in our GA thinking? Are there enough levels of accountability? It is our key platform after all, but is it in fact too cumbersome? And does it really help decision making with your input? And so considerations such as these were coming out, i.e. the GA agenda is structured, remember, in response to our statutes. So that structure throughout the GA is because it said so in our rules and our internal way of working. So we're not doing anything wrong, but do we need to change it? Other things to think about. If we do change the GA, maybe we reduce it to half a day, then will that enable sufficient response time from member associations? Will the time allocation be the best use of time? Or if we do a half day, does that mean we could use the other half for commission meetings? More on commissions later. Pekka will touch on that. Or alternatively, maybe our General Assembly goes to every 2 years. Or do we have an executive committee? I have assumed in this thinking and in the debate that the GA on the final day would remain as half a day activity. It's pretty brief, it's pretty to the point and sums up the week well. But hey, if you've got a thought, let me know. So I'd now like to go on to the second, which is key issue B. Again, it's about involvement, increasing members' involvement. If we heard that they want to enhance decision making, but honestly, if you increase your involvement, will this aid in greater transparency? Let me just take you through some of the considerations. I mean, the first question perhaps to ask is, which ones do you feel you're not involved in? And do you have time to be more involved? If lots more information comes to you, will you respond? And that links back a little bit to key issue A, which talked about members' response times if then the GA is only half a day. So we've got to think about the purpose of our General Assembly. Is it an oversight forum, which probably it is right now? Or do you want to change it to detailed management? Or is detailed management done online? But again, the above bullet points apply. Yes, we could use technology. And crumbs, look what happened in the last 3 months. The amount of online communication and technology that's currently being used. But how sustainable are we in our decision making to go to that technological platform that quickly? And there was also comments about annual communication of the reports. Again, our statutes state this, but if you think this is untimely, then hey, let's hear from you and you need to tell us so. The final consideration is probably the balance of resources, because more involvement does mean more time for both the office, member associations, as well as individuals. I'm briefly going to move on to the third, C, and why I say brief is because the key issue C talks about the need where there was a need for more collaboration and more cooperation. But our matrix structure is pretty flat. It does allow ways in which to be relevant and transparent, but when you look at the considerations, maybe the relationships are not quite right. And how do we therefore work closer together between them all? And importantly, driving that collaboration throughout the matrix structure, but also going digital, webinars, e-meetings, which incidentally the council already does, and I'm sure others do it in their smaller pockets as well. On communication, there's going to be a little bit more, again, that Pekka's likely to pick up in an issue later on. And the final thing maybe for procedures in governance is the 4-year term. FIG operates on that 4-year term. Will we get more uptake with people being involved and therefore involved in governance if we shorten it, say, maybe to 2 years? It was a thought that came out in the feedback, but again, we would like to unpack this a little bit more and hear from you. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Pekka, who will be talking about the next issue, D.
Go.
Thank you, Diane. I will start my speech by talking a little about the FIG branding and conferencing. So whatever we do, like arrange working weeks, it should be effective and enhance the FIG brand. Our conferences have remained more or less the same over the years, but is there a need to change something in them, modernize or reformat the way to better meet members' expectations? So I'd like to go over to some of the considerations now. Do we really want every working week to be bigger and shinier than the ones before? Does that make any sense? Doesn't it rather put a heavy pressure on the aspiring new hosting member associations? Good is good enough, and why not instead try to find ways to save costs, like with the help of virtual technology, arranging virtual meetings or sessions. Another issue concerning the conference program structure could be to have new forums parallel to the normal standard technical sessions. Or we could invite other associations to co-organize some parts of the sessions and the program. So, and now over to Diane.
Thank you so much, Pekka. And I'm going to pick up on the next key issue, E, people and volunteering. And I guess this is because often the feedback was talking about, well, it's the same sort of people. What about the new generation, importantly? And this came into our minds about the establishment perhaps of a formal group or a committee to support people who wish to volunteer for roles, but also help evaluate and help them if they are willing to actually volunteer. Maybe talk about what it takes. And in addition, they could provide insight as a group into the responsibilities, particularly for the higher memberships and higher inputs from you and I as volunteers. And so we've called it the nominations committee, but it could have any other name. And considerations came up, which means trying to retain that enthusiasm of individuals within the member associations to come into the wider, bigger FIG family and be involved at that level as well. So as I said a moment ago, exploring whether it's possible or even desirable for a nominations committee. And importantly, it will have to take on perhaps the role of ensuring diversity, global particularly, at officer level, and mentoring and encouraging people. And even perhaps getting involved in other activities in terms of selecting or finding people to be involved in expert group meetings. I'm often asked to be an FIG representative. Sometimes I'm able to go out to another, but if I haven't got that person immediately in my mind, I might be missing you because I don't know that you could be interested. So I think I'm now going to hand over to Pekka just to continue that theme a little bit further.
Yes, so a little more about people and volunteering. One of the key points is that we want to increase member association and member engagement in the commission work. So how can we ensure that it becomes a reality, remembering that there are and exist time and funding constraints? Considering and going through the considerations behind this issue, to start with is how Commission chairs can actively encourage members to participate. Whether it is about good communication and an interesting and good work plan for the Commission, and linking the work plan better to the Council's 4-year strategy. An important point and aspect is to try to clarify the roles and nature of the different task forces and networks and other bodies in the FIG administration. And to think about that there's a trend that a decrease in professional recruitment at national levels, and that often and is going to lead to less members in the member associations. So this plays a role in the possibilities of the associations to have their members dealing with the Commission work. So going over to the next slide, which also refers to people and volunteering, is the key issue here is that it is commonly seen that there should be a clearer route to transit from young surveyors, surroundings and network to the main FIG. And you all know and understand and appreciate that FIG is a community of long careers and long-lasting friendships between the members, which of course is a very good thing. But thinking of and considering what this all means is that there is a flip side to this beautiful, nice friendship atmosphere. The long-lasting involvement slows down the transition of the younger generation to the FIG positions and activities in the main field. The change can always feel difficult, but change is needed to continuously renew and refresh the organizational life and thinking. So we should look for and find ways to support young members transition to the positions in the main FIG. So going over to the next slide, your observations, as Diane has mentioned several times, are very important. They will have an influence on how the task force discusses and phrases its next report to the Council, and how the report will look like. Let us know about your thoughts and email your ideas and views to us. And if you find it useful, we can also arrange a virtual meeting and discussion with groups, say about 4 to 6 people, if you find that is easier way to convey your messages. We do, in the next slide, we do appreciate your collaboration and ideas, and that is why we ask you about all these questions about your thoughts and want to analyze and make a conclusion, find a way forward to meet your expectations. Thank you for joining us in this webinar. We are looking forward to hearing more from you. And now Diane will wrap up the story with some practical issues.
Thank you so much, Pekka. And to all of you listening, I do hope that this has given you a flavour. There was so much that we as a core team in the task force heard, and we have attempted to distill this into specific lines of inquiry. Before I do wrap up, just a quick point about the timeline. So we're having this discussion now. Also, in a couple of weeks, I will be talking to ACCO to gain their meeting. by the end of July. Please, Pekka's already asked your constructive critiques, please, from you. If you want further online consultation meetings, of course, please email myself or Pekka and we'll sort something out. There will be the feedback compiled in September so that we have an initial draft report which will be then sense checked by the entire core team in December and in February reported to Council. And then, of course, they will be able to report to members of the General Assembly in May 2021. So I can't resist but to prompt your engagement again. Here are the emails for you to use with putting through your comments. And once again, from Pekka and from I, thank you so much for listening. Look forward to your continuing engagement. Goodbye.